Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Top Bins with Twins. Today, it's going to be a solo podcast, so it's just going to be me, Paul. So hopefully, this is going to be an informative podcast, but it is probably going to be a pretty emotional one. I'm recording this right now, a day after the U.S. has just gone out of the 2026 World Cup. And not to jump too far ahead here, but I am very disappointed with kind of where things have gone. But before I dive into that and start the therapy session, if you're a first time listener, if you're somebody that always takes the time to listen to the pod, whatever the situation is, I want to thank you for being here. Luke would do the same too if he was here. But and while you're here too, feel free to give us a like, subscribe, all of those things. It doesn't seem like it matters, but it really does matter to us. And we just want to, keep building this podcast to a place where, we're having conversations with people all across the globe, like we already kind of are doing at the moment. But yeah, so I'm just gonna go ahead and just talk a little bit here about where the USMNT is sitting at this moment. The disappointment in Seattle, where you play a Belgium team that is easily gettable, and probably the worst iteration of a Belgium team in the past 10, 15 years, I would say, with where that golden generation was and the different peaks and valleys that they've been through, which I mean, it's kind of a generation that's disappointed so far. And it's really a tough one to take here. But we've got a little presentation here, so we'll kind of jump into that and just go for it there. But let's see. Okay. So as we can see, everybody here that's listening knows that we are kind of at the same place that the U.S. men's national team has been over the past, I would say, almost 50 years. We have been at a lot of different highs and lows. It always just kind of seems to end at this point, though, where we find a round of 16 match and can't get over the hump. And then we have to wait the next 4 years and hope and pray that things have just changed and all those things. And this is a little bit of a different context this year with the World Cup in the United States. You could make the argument that actually, I think it's not just an argument. This U.S. team did make an impact on kind of breaking into like the cultural scope of the United States. And I mean, people that live here in the U.S. know there's watch parties everywhere. Everybody's talking about it. It's probably the biggest sports story of the past, month and a half. And this is kind of the dead period, after the NBA Finals, where there's not really much else going on. But this U.S. team did make an impact. I'm sure that people were talking to you about the World Cup. I know everybody. I have so many people during the World Cup that I don't talk to that regularly, and we reach out, we talk soccer, all that stuff, and I absolutely love that. That's what we want. Like we want the game to grow. We want this to be more accessible to other people. And the U.S. is usually, the most accessible route for people that aren't the biggest soccer fans. Maybe they're not really big into La Liga, Premier League, all those things. And then they see the US every 4 years and it's like, man, I really enjoy watching them. It's fun. The atmospheres are crazy. Did you see the Colombian fans? All those things, like it is something that is very special. And it kind of sucks that it's every 4 years, but that's probably special. That's why it's special, because it's every 4 years. We don't get it all the time. And I think that's part of the reason I feel so disappointed right now with this team, because you're always looking forward to World Cups, but this was a home World Cup. There were so many opportunities for this US team to really use this stage to catapult soccer into a different conversation here in the US. And I really do think we were close to that. There were a lot of good moments in this World Cup. I mean, you have the 4-1 win against Paraguay to start off. That just felt like it was a different level of a US team that we had not seen before. And I don't think that anybody out there would really argue the fact that the US set the standard extremely high in the first game, and that's really what you want to do in a World Cup. They just couldn't deliver at the very end here. Um, and it is really disappointing. I think it's good that I'm doing this podcast 24 hours later, basically, not right after, because I struggled to sleep last night. Like that's just part of being a passionate fan and somebody that really just cares. And whenever things like this happen, whenever you build up, I mean, we've known about this US World Cup for a long, long time now. And just to have that, all of that disappear because of one day where this team did not show up. And to be clear, don't want to take it easy on this team for how they perform in this World Cup, because at the end of the day, you had the opportunity. You've built up yourself to this point where, there's been a huge backlash or back and forth between the older generations of players like Tim Howard, um, Landon Donovan. We know those guys have a podcast. They do their thing. They talk about the U.S. very candidly. But this was the time for those U.S. players to prove those players wrong. And guess what? They didn't. They just simply did not. I mean, they had good moments, but it's the same thing that those guys struggled with. They just couldn't get over the hump and advance and do something that really U.S. soccer needed. But at the end of the day, just couldn't make happen, And that's okay. They did perform well in moments, but it just wasn't good enough. But yeah, let's move forward here. So I would say, I would argue the bare minimum was achieved. This is a a result that I think if you talk to me at the beginning of the World Cup and you're like, hey, you're gonna win your group, you're gonna advance from the round of 32, and then in the round of 16 you'll go out to a team like Belgium. I think I would have been relatively happy with that, just considering the fact that A, we didn't go out in the group like Copa America, or B, that we didn't go out in the round of 32 in an expanded format. And so some of these things do have a caveat. I mean, the U.S. played a Bosnia and Herzegovina team that is not the most talented team in the world. Not to knock them, not to pull anybody apart, but is not even, I would say, a C or D level team on the world stage. And so, I mean, you do get your first knockout win since 2002. This U.S. team, you could argue, probably played better against the Netherlands in 2022, when they basically were probably an early Pulisic chance away from pushing that Netherlands team, who in the next couple of rounds, honestly, almost took out Argentina, who were the eventual champions. So I mean, that was a very good Dutch team the U.S. played. I'd say the U.S. really pushed the Netherlands, and the scoreline probably does deceive that a little bit. And that's probably the most disappointing part of looking at this Belgium match, which we'll slide forward here. So, like I was saying, the most disappointing part of this match was really the lack of competition. And I'm not ever going to be a person that sits here and says there isn't the attitude was wrong, the effort was wrong. I mean, I think it was just an execution issue. This U.S. team did want to win the game. There's no question about that. These players. I mean, you see Weston McKennie on the bench crying afterwards. You see Pulisic, who is obviously, there's a lot of different conversations probably to be had about him after this World Cup. I don't think this is the time, kind of in the context of the moment, but like, these players do genuinely care a lot. The biggest issue here is that why didn't we execute? Why were we giving up goals in the 9th minute on a ball that was bouncing in your own box? You have 3 defenders around it. Nobody gets a head on it. You let the second bounce happen, and then they get a tap in whenever your 38-year-old center back is supposed to be marking somebody and he's not. Like, those little things amount to moments, and that's a goal that you should not give up in this World Cup. On that stage, worst case scenario, if you're the U.S. in that game, you want to keep it close. You want to let the crowd still be involved, and just give yourself moments and space. And the U.S. just couldn't get a handle of this match. I mean, so they got Tillman's goal in the 31st minute after Belgium had scored the first goal. Honestly, it was completely against the run of play. But I mean, Tillman has been a standout of this World Cup, and you would think that Bayer Leverkusen are probably going to be getting offers for him. It may not be this summer for him, but could be a big money move sometime soon on the horizon with how he's played at the World Cup. One of the top rated midfielders, somewhat playing, some would argue, out of his typical position of more of an attacking midfielder, or even a little bit out wide. He was phenomenal in this World Cup, just probably one of the better U.S. players. But then it's just goals come in pairs, right? You see the U.S. scores, the fans are basically still celebrating, and then 52 seconds later, you give up a goal to Ketelaere. I can't ever say his name right, but it's just those little things where, I mean, like, that, like, if you're the US, you go into halftime 1-1 in a game where you've distinctly been outplayed in the first half, you have a chance. Like, you have a good chance. And then at and the literally 56 seconds after you give up a goal, the momentum shifts back to Belgium, and the US was basically didn't really create much for the rest of the half. You see that at halftime, Dest is subbed out. Gio Reyna comes in. He makes, I would say, an impact. I'm not one of those people that's going to sit here and just talk about this U.S. team, shit on them for 45 minutes, however long I ramble on in this podcast. They were better to start out the second half. There is no doubt in my head. I haven't rewatched the game. I really don't want to. I will at some point, I'm sure. But like, the US were better starting out the second half when they added that extra midfielder in, kind of changed the shape a little bit. And the US were kind of taking it to Belgium a little bit. And then you have the Matt Freese era, which I just it's just so demoralizing. You're pushing, and like, I think if you're the US, if you don't make that error, who knows where the game goes? Who realistically knows? Soccer is a weird, funny sport where Belgium were kind of getting a handle on the US changes, and of course there was Doku in the wings, De Bruyne, Lukaku, all of these people that could have came in and made a difference. But at that point, until the freeze error, I would say that the US could have even handled those subs with it would have been tricky, but I mean, you keep the score at 2-1. The US maybe makes a couple substitutions. And hypothetically, let's say Pulisic doesn't get hurt. Maybe he finds a couple moments later in that game, or maybe even in the 70th minute, you go 2-2. Who knows what happens in these matches? I mean, I just watched Colombia and Switzerland play, and both of those teams, I mean, I think the US could easily beat both of them. And it's just, on this day, the US just weren't good. Like, they just weren't good enough. They did not show up for the moment. And that's really the most disappointing part, is that what this could have done for US soccer, if we advance to the quarterfinal and you're playing, who is it? Let me see. Let's go to the next page. Yeah, I'm just gonna skip that one. Oh, okay. We're just gonna stay here. So if you're the US team, you see, I'm trying to think of who the US played next. Whatever, we're gonna skip over that. But Spain. So you see Spain in the quarterfinals. I mean, that is a distinctly more difficult matchup than Belgium, and the US obviously cannot handle Belgium on this day. But you never know. If you get to the quarterfinal of a World Cup, especially at home, things can just happen. Things can absolutely happen. Maybe Pulisic was fighting this injury that we didn't know about. He goes out of the game. If the US managed to find a goal, sneak a late one at the end, they win. He has a little more time to recover. Maybe he looks like the Pulisic from the beginning of the World Cup. Who knows? I really don't know. But it's just kind of the loss of what this team could have done. It's deflating. It really is. I mean, I've been a huge defender of this US crop of players, and the the people that always are talking about them, whether it's their mentality, it's they all can't, they're not playing well together. There's this, that, and other. At this point, maybe those people are right. I mean, I want to be the person that sits here and defends them, and I'll still follow this group of players wherever they go. Like, it's just very defeating to put so much into this and then have it just be disappointing. Because I mean, but that is a part of being a fan and all in soccer, especially with these World Cup cycles. You set yourself up, you get excited, the team performs, and they let you down, and that's just sadly a reality of what it's like to be a U.S. soccer fan. But like I was kind of saying earlier, this has been going on for basically decades now. I mean, you see the U.S. back in 2014, Tim Howard basically sets the record for most saves in a World Cup match. Still lose to Belgium 2-1. You go out to the Netherlands 3-1 in the round of 16. And then Copa America, going out in the group stage, Tim Weah's red card, all of these little things. And then you lose 4-1 to Belgium in a home World Cup. Just flat, it really just is one of those things that I don't sometimes at this point I don't have the words to describe like that. This U.S. team just I don't know. I'm gonna go to the next slide. I'm losing it a little bit here, but so and the sad thing too is if we look at this bracket, right? So France plays Morocco, Spain and Belgium, Norway, England, Argentina, Switzerland. You're seeing a lot of the big boys that are left. So France is in there, Spain, England, Argentina. You'd have to say those four are the heavy favorites out of this tournament pool. That my big thing here is that like if the US played Spain, probably not going to win that game. If you advance and get to a semifinal, you just have to win 2 games when you win a World Cup. Do I want to play France? No, I'm not crazy. France's attack is the best in the world, hands down. They're loaded in the midfield. They have some of the best defenders. Maybe not best defenders, but all of these teams at this point are incredibly talented and they're there for a reason. You would probably argue that if the US beat Belgium, you'd say Switzerland and the US are probably the two of the weaker teams that are left in this tournament. But at this point, everybody's here for a reason. And if you're the US, you just wanted to give yourself a chance in this final. Okay. And so we're going to look forward a little bit here. It's difficult because, with this current crop of US players, we haven't seen a great performance at any of the big tournaments they've been in, right? So, I mean, 2022, they get to the round of 16, lose to a Dutch team. I would probably argue that that was a better result for them, considering they pushed that Dutch team, I would say, pretty much to their limit. If Pulisic scores that early goal, who knows what happens? And in this World Cup, I mean, you're a top seeded team. You get an easy bracket. You beat Paraguay the first game, you beat Australia in kind of a closer match, and then you lose the last group game to Turkey, who has nothing to play for. And then you play Bosnia round one. That goes well. You get the result you need. And then there's this whole red card, Trump calling FIFA, all of those different things that are happening where I feel like there was so much positive momentum going into this turn, into probably the round of 16 before the last 2 days, that the red card, all of those things, just I think part of that maybe derailed what was going on. I don't really know. But so we're looking forward here too. I don't want to just sit here and blabber on about what this World Cup looked like, and it realistically it's over. like there's really not too much to be said, but at this point in time, I think looking forward a little bit is probably to give a little more of a positive tint on this World Cup. I mean, I don't think that we far underachieved in this World Cup. I just think we were really close to overachieving, so that's kind of why it hurts more so. But looking forward, I mean, I know that in 2026, 2027, we should have the Gold Cup next summer. And then after that, the summer after, we'll have Copa America. That probably I think will be on U.S. soil. And the big thing I think that the U.S. Soccer Federation needs to do going into the 2030 World Cup is you have to line up as many of those big powerhouse teams as possible. So, what they did before the World Cup, playing Germany, playing Senegal, playing Belgium, who honestly whooped the U.S. before the World Cup and did it during the World Cup. So maybe that's something to think about there. But just looking at how do you improve as a national team, right? Especially if you are in the Federation of CONCACAF, which is its own special little entity, where you go to these matches that have low, I would say, playing conditions. You play teams that are subpar to what the U.S. needs to be doing on a consistent basis to improve as a team. And this is part of the issue I think that really is preventing the US from getting past these round of 16 matches is that it is so rare for the US in a CONCACAF situation to be the team that's being attacked. They are always the one that's on the front foot. They're playing teams that are, it's the David versus Goliath situation. You're playing, I'm not going to say any names of countries because I don't want to alienate anybody, but you're playing a team on the road that maybe one of their players is a cook on during the week. Like little things like that, where I mean, you want to be playing these teams that have a high level of skill and where they can put the U.S. in uncomfortable situations. And right now, I mean, in CONCACAF, I mean, there's like Mexico, there is Canada, I guess you would say. And then it kind of drops off a cliff about where the level of competition is. And you need to have those minutes against teams that are going to push you, make you, make, and like for Belgium, for example, today, what Belgium did to the US's midfield in this match, they knew exactly how the US were going to line up, and they exploited that. And the US did alter stuff at halftime with the substitution of Gio to kind of get an extra body in there, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't. And so these are games that the US should be trialing to get to the point where, you know, you're playing Belgium in the round of 16. Oh, well, I remember whenever just last summer we were playing Spain and they had us for the first 45 minutes and then we made adjustments. We countered what they wanted to do. And then we were able to get a late goal to equalize in a friendly. Like little things like that don't seem like they matter, but they 100% do because you're building the team mentality. You're building the ability to counter teams in situations like this, especially in what am I thinking? In football and playing football for your country, right? I wouldn't say club level football, but on a country level of football, you see that, you know, the tactics are different. You can't build as much of a cohesive system, obviously, because there's not as much time as say if you're with your club team where you have day in and day out tactical preparation, practices, all these things. It's just different on a national level. But whenever you're there, though, you have to have that mentality with the team. And I really haven't talked about Poch much on this pod. I think that he did a great job with this US team. I think he kind of took a lot of the strengths of this team and accented for success at times. Do I think that like the reason why he sets us up in a back three with the wing backs with the depth, all that stuff is because he knows that Dest, Anthony Robinson can really pull other teams apart. And you could argue that Dest and Robinson were probably two of our most underperforming players at this World Cup. Like the whole system he built was to make teams uncomfortable and make them worry about all of that with, you know, Pulisic in front, with Malik Tillman in front, with Ballo running behind, all those things. And really, it's kind of amazing that things went so well considering what the wing backs were doing for us, and also just the center back pairing. I mean, that's a big thing to me is that how from 2022 we did not find a left-sided center back partner for Chris Richards is absolutely mind blowing to me. Like, what are we doing? How do we not have the ability? Or the U.S. Soccer Federation? I don't even want to like jump in to like what they're thinking or how even how we're developing talent in this US, because you're telling me that with a country of the resources of all the different things that we have and the ability to produce talent across all spectrum of sports, and don't hit me with the argument that the US needs to have their best athletes play in the sports, blah blah blah, blah. That I'm not that's shit. But how are we not able to produce a left-sided center back who is agile, who is a high IQ player who can play the ball out besides Chris Richards? Like, how is it still Tim Ream? He literally back in 2022 was saying, "Oh man, I'm so glad I made the roster. I thought I was done after 2018." How does that happen? How is it two progressive World Cups where he's like, "I'm just lucky to be here"? Which no shade to Tim Ream. He was a great player. He still is a competitive player, but he's not of the level that you take him to a World Cup. But there's not other options. And I see exactly why Poch started him. He does offer a lot with the ball at his feet and his ability to play out and kind of pick teams apart. That I completely see. The failure is with the US's lack of an ability to produce a better option there. And that is very concerning. And that's something that I'll kind of touch on here later on. But we see the layout: Copa America 2028, World Cup 2030. It's going to be in Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, with some games kind of moonlighting, I think, in I think it's Paraguay, Argentina, and another South American country. But that's the next horizon is 2030. There's some bigger question marks for this U.S. team. And so just looking at this, I mean, so we'll see in 2030 There's going to be Pulisic, McKinney, Adams. They're going to be 31. You'd argue probably still in their peak, still in their prime. Depends on what Pulisic decides to do with his career. If he wants to, just make some money, go back home, he could easily, NYCFC, we're bidding for him just a little while ago. He could come back, and I would argue that if he goes back to MLS, that's going to be the worst move of his career, and he probably won't be in the conversation by the time he's 31. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he goes to MLS, gets his minutes managed, plays enough to keep his legs sharp. Will he be at a top level that he could have been if, say, he takes a contract to go back to England or maybe plays in Spain and still plays at that top level? By the time he's 31, who knows where he could be? We really don't know what this crop of players where they're going to be. Like Jedi, he's had issues. It's documented in the HBO it's documented in the HBO series they did on the USMNT. He's had a ton of issues the past probably year and a half. Will he even be there? You have Chris Richards, who will be 30, which honestly is kind of crazy to me. Ballo at 29, Tillman at 28, Pepe at 27. There's going to be other faces that are going to enter the equation. There has to be, because if we're looking at some different features here, let's see. In my mind, I think there's probably going to be 3 main points with the U.S. that need to be addressed probably ASAP, and that's going to be right back. We could say that's Alex Freeman. Maybe Freeman will be the one that's starting by the time we get to 2020, by 2030. I just don't think it's going to be Serginho Dest. There's so many things that he offers where, he is one of the most fluid right backs, you would say, with the ball at his feet. But what he just gives up behind him as a defensive option, I just don't think we can have long-term success with him probably in that position. If it's the 3-4-3 setup that we've kind of been in, or however you want to argue, whatever the setup is, he can be successful in that position where he's not asked to do too much. But he was obviously on toast last night. Like he was subbed out at halftime. There's I would doubt that there's any Dest YouTube comps that are being posted or Instagram story comps. I would really hope not after that performance. But that's a massive gap. You have to have somebody in that right back position that can kind of push teams a little bit with, maybe overlap runs or being good with the ball at their feet, whatever the situation is. But really, you need somebody that's going to be solid in that back line. And that's part of the problem for the U.S. right now, is that 2 of the big things we're looking at is we need a right back, we need a center back to be beside Richards, and then also the goalkeeper. I mean, I will feel bad for Matt Freese in the next couple of days. As of right now, I'm still just pissed that this is how, the U.S.'s World Cup's hope slipped away. But those are three places there that the U.S. needs to address. I would also say the midfield too, probably. Who knows with Tyler Adams' injury record, where that's going to be. And also too, right wing. Like we had Serginho Dest basically playing the right wing at this World Cup, and that did not work out well for anybody. There were a lot of moments, even in the Paraguay game, where he gets played through, I think, by Ballo, where he's completely alone in the box, like probably a defender 15 yards away, takes an errant touch, can't get a shot off, can't get a cross in. If that's a clinical right winger goal, we keep moving forward, and that's probably even a bigger win against Paraguay. And who knows? Those little things do mean a lot whenever you're looking at a World Cup campaign. So big questions to answer here about the next cycle moving forward. And this is very early on. Obviously, we're still 24 hours out. But one of the big things we have to ask is Pochettino going to stay? I mean, he's somebody that really did make an impact. It felt like he had buy-in to these U.S. players, to the U.S. system. He seemed to really love being in the United States, and like he was one of the bigger faces that was on the field after the game, singing "Country Roads," singing with the crowds. There's videos too of him crying after the U.S. lost the Gold Cup. What was it? 2026? No, 2025? Yeah, last summer's Gold Cup. He was crying in the locker room after they lost to Mexico. This is somebody that really cares about football, and I think he would honestly love to stay and help grow the sport and do all those things. It just comes at a weird time in his career where you have to ask questions of like, if he spends the next 4 years here with the US up to the next World Cup, that's a large portion of his career. Where I mean, maybe he's over club football. Maybe he doesn't want to enter back into that world. I'd love if he stayed. I know there's a lot of people that kind of go with the whole second window thing with managers. I think that you would even consider this kind of a half window with kind of the time that he started and all those things. And he's adaptable. He would be able to kind of work with this US team. And there's a lot of new faces that could emerge in this US team, like those gaps I was just talking about with the right wing, center back beside Richards, right back, another midfielder, more wingers, all of those things. Who knows where we're going to be? But there's a lot of young players that are kind of spreading across. Of course, everybody probably knows about Kevon Sullivan. He should be heading to Manchester City, I think it's here in 2 years, maybe a year from now. That it feels like he signed as a City player like years and years ago, but he should be going to Manchester City a couple years. I think it's almost a year from now. But there's going to be new younger players. I know we have some players in the Dortmund system. There's people in Spain, and it's just like how can we develop more talent? How can we quickly change the conversation to from one the big thing is the pay to play system. How can we adapt things to where it's a hotbed to grow talent? How is this because I mean look at a situation like let's say London, Paris, those are two of the biggest cities in the world. How can we get New York City to be a place that's producing talent at that kind of level? And that would take 15, 20, 25 years to get there, but these steps have to be taken now. If we want to have somebody that's successful in the 2050 World Cup, those things have to happen now. It's not something that it's like, oh well, maybe we'll change the system one day, whatever, blah blah blah. No, it has to be now because if nobody takes that first step, there's not going to be any results down the line, and we're going to keep going out in these round of 16s. And it's just so upsetting to see, you know, the growth of soccer in the US, right? You see your old crop of players, Clint Dempsey, Landon Donovan, Tim Howard, all these guys that were good on a club level, they none of them touched the peak of Christian Pulisic. He's won a Champions League. He's played for AC Milan, one of the biggest clubs in Europe. And yes, that maybe that's a weaker AC Milan side than it used to be. He's played at Chelsea. He's played at Dortmund. What he's done at club level has not been touched by any other US players, right? There's nobody from a club perspective, I believe, that can touch Christian Pulisic. He scored in semifinals of a Champions League to get Chelsea to the final. Should have assisted in that final as well. I won't go there, but it's the disconnect between I think the older generation and the younger generation of US players, or this current crop of US players and the older generation, is exhausting at times because I think the younger players just want to be embraced by the older generation. The older generation's still salty that they weren't getting those opportunities. They weren't getting those chances, which in full reality, it's kind of a middle ground of all the above, where the US players that are currently playing in the top 5 leagues across the world are there because of probably the actions and all that stuff of the players beforehand, but they're also there because they're more talented. They are better. And so that's what we need to see. We need to have players consistently at Real Madrid. We need players consistently at Barcelona, at Arsenal, of course. Maybe even Manchester City. I don't love that, but we have to be prevalent across these top clubs in the world because that's how you get better. You get minutes against the top players, top leagues, all those things. And then whenever you go play for your national team, it's easy, right? You're playing you go on the road, you play in Mexico, and it's like, okay, well you see 10 League MX players and maybe one player that's 17 who got a big move to a club. Okay, fine, you all can try it. You can try your shit house. You can try all these things, but the US, it's definitively better. You have a tactical identity. You have a higher tactical level, and that has to happen. Like, I mean, it's possible it won't, but it has to happen if the US wants to be somebody that's consistently out of these round of 16 games into semifinals, into finals. Like, if you want that development, it has to be a systematic change. And I don't think it's going to happen, but it could. I hope it does. Yeah, I kind of jumped forward a little bit here, but yeah. So we're looking at this is like I said, I jumped forward a little bit. This is looking at becoming a quarterfinal nation, right? How are we going to consistently be in those quarterfinals and also winning quarterfinals, going to semis, going to finals, keeping players in the deep end? We have to have players in Champions League games. We have to have players in these high impact matches where they're building their skill set. They're getting those highly pressurized minutes that are going to make them better and allow them to deliver on a stage where, you're at a home World Cup and you're playing a Belgium team where you're outclassed. But hey, I remember last season when we were playing Juventus away on the road, I managed to figure this one thing out, and that allows me to look at this game and say, you know what? Actually, I do see a way that I can impact this game in my own role and to make an impact because that's all it really takes is that, let's say if Pulisic would have came out yesterday, he was on top of it in the Paraguay game, which the injuries, it is what it is. I know there's a lot of people that are going to knock him for the amount of minutes he played to this World Cup, but let's just say hypothetically he comes out, gets instead of losing the ball the amount of times he did in the first half, he steps out into the 15th minute, or let's just say even before the goal happens for Belgium, the first one. He takes control of that match, beats his defender one on one, creates a chance for Ballo. The crowd gets more alive. Things start happening, and then maybe Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie feel like they can step out a little more, put a little more pressure on Belgium's midfield. They make an error, or all any of those little things happen. Because if you have a player that's attacking, that's making those, that's attacking those lines essentially of a back line on a team like Belgium, then the midfield doesn't have as much space, and they feel like they can't just run around the U.S. and it just makes things so much harder. But another thing too, we're saying we're fixing the base of the pyramid. This is just kind of talking about academy access, right? We need to have an ability where players don't have to pay to, get to a better club or do all these things. It should just be an open system where the talent speaks for itself, right? Where these players that that are coming from a small town in Kentucky. Let's just go with that. If you are the best player in a small town in Kentucky, and let's say you get scouted by a team in St. Louis, you should be able to go there and you should be able to play for free, right? It shouldn't be reliant on your social standards, your economic standards, whatever it is. It just shouldn't be relying on that because that's not the way we're going to produce talent. And it's shown. I mean, the best players the US has produced, at least in this current crop of players, went as quickly as they could to Europe and developed there. That's what needs to happen is players need to be going to these MLS academies, whatever the situation is, maybe USL. It doesn't really matter. And getting in front of European, South American, all of those things, scouts, and getting to bigger clubs throughout the world and learning to play football that way. Because if you can get to one of these German academies, you can get to one of these English academies or Spanish, that would be even better. If you can get there, grow, and keep developing your talent and just keep that level up from there, the sky's the limit. It really is. And this is kind of what I touched on earlier too, the schedule discomfort. The US has to play more difficult games. That's just simply what it is. You have to play these difficult games so you have the tools and ability to counteract teams like Belgium. And then so we're also looking up identity. What is this US's team tactical identity under Poch? I think it was pretty clear. I think there's people out there that would argue that the US maybe didn't have a set game plan, that kind of stuff. I think that it was pretty clear under Poch what they wanted to do. They wanted to get their wing backs high. They wanted to play through Tillman in the middle, and then also kind of get the ball out wide to Pulisic, press teams high, get a lot of turnovers, use your speed, use your athleticism to really make teams uncomfortable. And they couldn't do that against Belgium. They couldn't touch Belgium. Belgium was just playing over the United States, and then they won every second ball. And that's something that honestly Pochettino probably should have adapted to. I think he tried to a little bit by adding Gio in. It was just too late. And so it should be said too that, I mean, I think this World Cup has been a huge hit in the United States. We've had the viewership numbers have been crazy. I know that the what was it? The Turkey? No, it was the Australia game. I think was the highest rated um, English broadcast for a men's soccer game in the United States with 31.8 million viewers. That is an awesome number. That is the number that like we want to see for friendlies. I mean, it realistically, I mean, if the soccer's growing, if by the time we host another World Cup, I don't know when that'll be, maybe 2050, 2040, 2060, who knows when it'll be, which I am going then. I don't really care. I will be at that World Cup if there's another one in the US. Um, but probably the reason I think I'm most disappointed in kind of how this match went was because if you get to that quarterfinal round, what it does for the impact of soccer long term in this country is unquantifiable. Like I really don't think that a lot of people could even really like I'm struggling to comprehend right now what the results of that would have been because you get to it, you beat Belgium. Let's say the United States finds a way to beat Belgium. Before the Freese error happens, we erase that. That doesn't happen. The U.S. gets another goal, manages to sneak a late one, or maybe they win in extra time. Uh, Hypothetically, let's just say that they advance to the round of 8 and get into the quarterfinal and they play Spain. If this U.S. team shows up in that match against Spain, they put in a good performance and maybe lose 2-1 to a late winner by Mikel Merino. I'm not going to say it. But they get a late, they push Spain in that quarterfinal. What that does for soccer in the United States, God, can you imagine the ratings of that match? I know the time probably, I think it's a weird kickoff time of like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it may not be peak, but like they would have smashed that 31.8 million number in a quarterfinal against Spain. Oh my God, that number would have been massive. And then so just the effects of like having the viewership on that and the spectacle of playing Spain in a World Cup in that situation in a quarterfinal, that's something this country needed from a soccer perspective, but we didn't get. And that's why you play the game, and that's just simply what happens. But who knows though? We could see a massive boom in soccer from how this World Cup has gone. There were a lot of really good moments. It was a letdown at the end, but maybe we'll see that 2-3 years from now, soccer's growing. Maybe MLS takes on more. Maybe you just see more American soccer fans turn to other leagues across the world. And that kind of creates a different mindset or ideology of soccer in the United States. I would love that. I would absolutely love to see soccer grow to the way that like my phone will blow up the way for a typical 8 a.m. game, Arsenal away against Fulham. I would absolutely love that because I just love this sport, and I know Luke feels the same way. He's not here today, and I think he would probably be, I'd say, probably a little more analytical and harder on this U.S. team than I've been so far on this pod. But he would be right. I think there's a lot of things that, and the word I keep using, are just disappointing about this performance. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, so in closing, guys, this is I know it's kind of been a little bit of a longer podcast. I think it's around 43 minutes. I've been just talking to a screen now, so I'm probably about to end it here with the with the podcast, not anything else. Oh man. But if you're still here, you want to talk more about what the US did in this World Cup, we're always here for conversation, debate, all of those things. Both me and Luke absolutely love the sport. That's not ever changing. We both are going to be here to talk about it for the foreseeable future. And we'll see. The 2030 cycle does actually start now. The clock started ticking as soon as the US lost against Belgium, and there's going to be, I'm sure, some highs and lows. Let's hope it's a little bit of more of a clean path than it was from 2022 to 2026, because there was a lot of bumpiness and turbulence going into this preparation cycle for the World Cup. So yeah, it's disappointing. I love this group of U.S. players. I really do, as much as they disappointed me. I think that's why it really kind of is hitting hard right now, because I really wanted them to be successful, and they still can. Like I showed you, a lot of them are going to be 30, 31, 28 ish in the realm of the next World Cup, and they'll still be on the global stage. They're still going to have an impact on U.S. soccer. So I think they'll probably get one more chance, maybe two more chances for some of them if they stay healthy, kind of hang around till their mid 30s. So I would love to see them be more successful, and hopefully we can add in some other parts and pieces that add a lot more tactical flexibility, creativity, and just really the ability to push these bigger teams and not do the same old thing where, we get to a round of 16 game, have a team that kind of punches us once and then we just go down. It's demoralizing, it's defeating, but all in all, I do think that this World Cup was a moderate success for the World Cup for the United States. We'll kind of just have to use history's lens there to see how the rest of this plays out. But yeah, that's gonna be all I have for the moment, guys. It's been officially 45 minutes of me rambling. So if you're still here, leave a comment, give us a like, subscribe if you're here on YouTube. Leave a comment. I'm here for any debate. Anything you disagree with, let me know, or just want to talk about. But I appreciate everybody listening to this podcast. And we'll be back. We'll probably take a little bit of time off. May do a couple more things on the World Cup, but then we'll really be gearing up, for the start of the FPL season here, probably mid-August in the Premier League season. So we'll see a lot more of that Premier League centric podcast material pretty soon. So yeah, like I said, thanks for joining today, everybody, and we will see you soon.